Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about noises. This lesson has been requested. It was actually requested a long time ago by regular mode eggs, and a few others have requested this lesson as well. I will say that I did put together about 30 words that are easy to explain when it comes to noises. I did have to leave a few off the list because they're difficult to show in pictures. But in this lesson, I will talk about the words we use to describe noises we hear as we go through our day and as we go through our week. So welcome to this English lesson about noises. I think you will enjoy it. Tick. So when you wear a watch, if you wear an old watch, the watch will tick. When something ticks, it sounds like, here's my first sound effect. It's like, tick, 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 tick. It's a very quiet sound. And I do want to explain that all of the noises and sounds that I will be teaching you can be used in the following way. You can say, I hear a tick, or you can say, my watch is ticking. So we switch to the ing version. So when you say, I hear a tick, it means you hear something like tick, tick, tick. And then when you say something is ticking, you mean that you are hearing that sound coming from it. So if you have an older watch, the kind that you wind up, you might hear tick, 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 your watch ticking. You might hear a tick and wonder where it's coming from, but it is your watch that is ticking. Crash. So again, you can hear a crash, or you might hear a car crashing into another car. So when you hear a crash, you tend to look. I don't know when the last time you heard this sound. If you drop a whole bunch of plates on the kitchen floor, you will hear a crash. The plates will go crashing down. You will hear the plates crashing onto the floor. If two cars hit each other, you will hear a crash. You could say, oh, I was walking the other day and all of a sudden I heard a crash. And I turned and I saw two cars hitting each other. I can't do this sound effect very good, but it would sound like, there's my crash sound. It's the sound of two things hitting each other or something hitting the floor. The rustle. So there are two things I can think of that rustle. The first thing I can think of would be paper. If you move paper around, you'll hear like, you'll hear the paper. It's probably better to do the sound effect with my hand. You'll hear the paper moving against each other, and you will hear the paper rustling. You will hear a rustle. The other thing that rustles would be leaves on a tree, especially in the fall when the leaves are dying and turning brown. When the wind blows, you'll hear the leaves rustle in the wind. You'll hear the leaves rustling. So definitely, those are the two things I can think of that will rustle. And then rattle. This is the thing you don't want to hear. But I'm trying to think, how could I make a rattling sound? I think here's a good way to do it. If you were driving along, I'm just using my lens cap. If you were driving along and you heard a rattle, you would be worried because it means something's broken on your car. If your car is rattling, if you hear a rattle, it means something's loose. You can see in this picture the mechanic or the person working on the car is tightening something because there was probably a rattle. Again, if something is supposed to be put together tightly, there will be no sound. But sometimes you're driving along, maybe you're driving along and there's no noise, and all of a sudden you go over a bump and then you hear, it goes, what was the last one? It goes bang. We didn't do bang yet. And then you hear, that would be really, really annoying. Should I do it right here? It's probably annoying to hear, but that would be rattle, not a nice thing to hear. It might mean your muffler is falling off, or you are having some sort of other problem with your vehicle. White noise. So this is an interesting one. We don't often see a screen like this on our TVs anymore because everything is digital. But a long time ago, and maybe you still have a TV like this with an antenna, if you tune to a station and no one's broadcasting, you will get white noise. White noise sounds like this. There's really no other way to describe it. We actually have a little machine that generates white noise. And then when we go away and sleep somewhere else, we use it to kind of help us sleep. We have a white noise generator, I guess. But that is the sound of white noise. We sometimes say it's also the sound of static. If you tune a radio, you will hear some static. You will hear white noise. And then a beep. A beep is simply as it sounds. So it's like you have a timer in the kitchen. When it gets to 0, you hear beep, 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 beep. It's the sound that an alarm clock makes. It's the sound that a timer makes when it's time to get up, or with a timer when the timer gets to 0. So if you are baking bread and you put it in the oven, you will set a timer. Beep, 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 beep. It actually beeps when you set the timer too. Ours does. It's like beep, 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 beep. And then you hit start. And then when it gets to 0, it goes beep, 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 beep. It's also the sound you will hear when a truck or other large piece of machinery is backing up. It will beep as it backs up. Bark. So this is a pretty simple one. I think most of you know this one. Sometimes you will hear a bark and you'll wonder, what was that? Is there a dog somewhere? You will hear a dog barking. Again, notice how I switch between the word and then the ing form. So you can hear a bark. That's the noise a dog makes. You can also hear a dog barking, the action of making that sound. Sometimes our dogs bark while I'm doing a live lesson, and then I'm always curious to know who's here, because usually I only hear a bark from the dogs when someone drives in the driveway. But a dog makes this sound, a dog will bark. Clink. I didn't bring any ice cubes, but a clink is the sound that you hear when you put ice into a glass. You won't hear it when you put ice into a plastic cup, but when you put ice into a glass, something actually made out of glass, it literally sounds like the word, like it'll go clink, 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 clink. The ice cubes will drop in, and as the ice cubes hit the glass, they make a very unique sound, and we call that a clink. You can also hear this sound when two glasses touch each other when you are toasting someone. If you celebrate, let's say we were to celebrate the birth of John Wedge's baby, and we all had a glass, and we would say, congratulations, and then a toast to the health of John's baby. And then we would touch, like it would go clink, clink. You would just hear clink, clink, clink as people touch their glasses together. So the sound that an ice cube makes when it hits glass, or the sound of two glasses clinking together. And then a clunk. You don't want to hear a clunk when you're driving your vehicle. A clunk is similar to a rattle, but probably a lower sound. So a clunk would sound like this. Hopefully you could hear that. Let me see if my mic is picking that up. That would not be a nice sound. If your tire is like coming apart, you might hear a clunk every time the tire goes in does one revolution. But a clunk usually means there's something major wrong with your car. And then you would go to the mechanic and say, my car is clunking. Our car actually was clunking at a certain speed once, and it ended up being one of these parts here, a tie rod or something. But when your car clunks, when you hear a clunk while you're driving your car, it's not a nice thing. It means you're going to be spending money. Click. So I think we're very familiar with this, because most of us, when we ride in vehicles, we hear that sound when we put our seatbelt on. So as you put it in, all of a sudden it will go. That was a bad sound effect. It more goes. Is that a good sound? Yeah, something like that, right? Like there's something inside that clicks. And so it holds the seatbelt in, and as you put it in, you hear the seatbelt click. when I have other people riding with me, if I don't hear all of the seatbelts click, I will say, hey, does everyone have their seatbelt on? Because I'm very, very concerned if people drive without their seatbelt on. Because if I get in an accident, I don't want them flying around inside my car. So when you put your seatbelt on, you will hear a click. That's the best sound effect I can do. You will hear a little click when they put their seatbelt on. Boing. So I don't know if you are familiar with the cartoon Winnie the Pooh. In Winnie the Pooh, there is a character called Tigger, and he bounces around. It's like he has a spring in him. And I always think of the sound boing when I see Tigger bouncing around. But if you have a spring and you bend the spring and let it go, it'll go boing. Like it'll just kind of go back straight again. If you push a spring together and let it go, it'll go boing. So you can kind of hear in the way I'm saying it, when something goes boing, it makes a funny little sound, but it kind of keeps moving a little bit. In Canada, we have these little door stops in our houses, and it is a spring. And as a kid, my parents would get annoyed, but it was fun to flick it, and it would go boing. My parents hated that sound, and they would yell at me to stop doing it. But if you have a spring, which you can compress, when you let it go, or if you bend it and let it go, it will make a boing. It will go boing. Boom. I think we're all familiar with this one. I want to keep this on the nicer side of things. There are things that go boom in times of war, but I like to talk about something like fireworks. Just seems like a nicer topic for something that goes boom. When you go to a celebration where they have fireworks, the firework will go up in the sky and then it will go boom. Like there will just, hopefully that wasn't too loud. It's like this deep, we also have the word thud. Like it just goes boom. And then maybe it even echoes a little bit, but it's like this deep, strong sound when the firework explodes. This type of firework in particular makes that sound. It usually goes psss, boom. Fun to watch. I don't get to watch fireworks until the May 24th weekend, Victoria Day, or Canada Day on July 1st. That will be the next two opportunities. Fizz, if you drink Coke or any other kind of soda, when you pour it into a glass, because it's carbonated, eventually it will fizz. It'll be like fizz. And so you'll have all these little bubbles coming to the top, and it makes this really, really, really fun fizz sound. You could say, oh, my cup of pop is fizzing. I open my can of pop, I can hear it fizzing. So when you hear a fizz, it's that sound of all the tiny little bubbles coming to the surface and making that very distinct sound, the fizz. Slosh. Have you ever worn rubber boots and then you get water inside the rubber boot? The rubber boot is supposed to keep the water out, but sometimes you get water in it. And that is the best description of the word slosh. The water just like there's just water in your boot. When you put water in a pail or tub, and if you go like this, the water will slosh around, and it will make that sound like shlush, shlush, like it's this. It sounds like the word slosh, which is most of these words are what we call onomatopoeia. That's when a word sounds like the sound it makes. That's my best description for that. So sometimes when you wear boots and you get water in the boots, the water will slosh around in the boots. Very uncomfortable. Or if you have a tub of water like this or a pail, and if you slide it back and forth, it will slosh. Twang. So we often say that country western singers sometimes will have a twang in their voice. So a twang, you can hear it in the word twang. A country twang would be like, I don't want to try to do that accent. Let's talk about a guitar. When you pluck a guitar string, like it makes like a twang sound, like So you can hear how the sound, if I was to graph it, like it's a pretty cool sound, the twang. When someone speaks with a twang, it usually means you're watching some sort of Western or someone from the South. They might have a twang in their voice. Vroom. So we often use the word vroom to talk about a car or other type of vehicle going by really, really quickly, and you hear the sound of the engine. So if someone was to leave my house, when they go on the road, you would hear them. It would just they would vroom. It's kind of a weird word, but you would just say, "Oh, there were a lot of cars vrooming by." Like it was hard to cross the road because there were so many cars vrooming by. So it's probably most used by kids playing with small toys, where they go like vroom, vroom. So as they're driving their little toy cars, they make the sound. They say vroom. So it's like vroom, vroom. And that's the sound they make as they are playing. Slurp. I believe I taught this word before, and I think I even used this picture. And I think I made the sound using my cup. It sounds like this. That is a slurp. It's when you are eating something like soup or drinking something and the liquid goes in your mouth, but a little bit of air goes in your mouth at the same time. And so it ends up making this sound. It's hard for me to make that sound because you don't normally drink that way, because it's considered a little bit rude, at least in Canada. So when you eat soup with noodles, you might be slurping and you make a slurp. There's another sound effect for you. So you slurp as you eat it. This one's familiar to almost all of you. You might hear a buzz. You might hear bees buzzing out in the garden. Bzzz. I've described before that I hate the sound of mosquitoes. If I hear zzz, I know a mosquito landed on me somewhere. As soon as the buzzing stops, and then you have to try and swat it. But a buzz sounds like that. Bzzz. And it isn't just used to describe bees or other insects. You might have, when you drive your car, something might buzz in your car. I know the other day I had a bunch of coins in the cup holder and they would vibrate, and there was this buzzing sound in the car and I didn't know where it was coming from. And it ended up being because I had some coins in the car, and for some reason they were vibrating really quickly, and I just heard like zzz. I'm like, where is that buzzing sound coming from? And then eventually I figured it out. A clank. So we didn't do clank, did we? Oh, we did clunk. We did click and clink. We did clink and clunk and click, but we haven't done clank yet. So clank is usually the sound of metal hitting metal. The best example I could come up with is if you close this gate, it will clank when it shuts. So it will make a sound like, let me see, do I have anything that would, like this? No, that's more of a clunk. It's usually like a metal sound. I should have found more things to make sound effects with. I don't have anything metal on my desk, but if you can imagine this type of latch, the sound it makes as it closes, I would describe as a clank. Oh, I heard the gate clank shut. That means I heard the latch on the gate. Let's see if we can make a clank here. Yeah, maybe something like that. I think it would be a little deeper and a little louder. Crackle. I don't think I have creaking, but we have crackle. So crackle, the best I can think of with crackle would be the sound of a campfire. When you sit around outside with friends and you have a campfire, the sound that the fire makes, we usually describe as the crackle of the fire. I can hear a crackle, or I can hear the fire crackling. If you have a wood stove in your house or a fireplace, you can often hear the fire crackle in the fireplace. So the wood is dry, and as it burns, it makes like a... I don't know what the hand is for. That's kind of this is the hand represents fire, and the sound is the crackling. You can also have crackling from things like, if you have like food and it's wrapped in some kind of paper, the paper can crackle as you open it up. But generally for me, when I think of the word crackle, I think of the sound of fire. Creak. So if you had a door like this, I guarantee you when you opened it, it would go creak. Like it would creak. It would make a creak. Whenever metal turns on metal or metal slides on metal, often you will get a creak sound, which means the door needs to be oiled. You need to put a little bit of oil on the hinges. But definitely, when you open a door like this, I think the hinges, the part where the door turns, it would probably go creak. Often if you watch scary movies, they will have doors that creak when you open them. You could also have it where if you walk on an old wooden floor, the floor might creak as you walk. Like you take a step and it's like creak, creak, creak every time, because the boards move slightly or the wood moves slightly. So it will creak. I was trying to think of something else that, I was just going to teach you. I didn't put the word rumble in here, but my stomach was just rumbling, and I'm hoping you didn't hear that. I hope the mic didn't pick that up. But then again, maybe it would be good if it picked it up. When you are hungry, your stomach will rumble, okay? Because you are hungry. It will start to make like a noise. So hopefully you aren't hearing that as I do this lesson. So I don't know if you know what this bird is called. It's called an owl, and an owl will hoot. So sometimes when you go outside, you'll hear, ooh, ooh, ooh. So the owl doesn't pronounce the T, but you will hear, ooh, ooh. And it's different than coo, coo. That's the sound of a dove, but the sound of an owl, this type of bird. And owls are good on a farm. Because owls eat mice and other pests. So if you ever hear that sound, it's a good sound. It means there's an owl around, hopefully at work. Mutter. So I feel bad because I put this picture of this old man here. He's probably a very nice old man. But if you ever hear someone muttering, it means they're usually talking to themselves and very quietly. Like you'll just hear like, those kids are on my lawn again. I don't know why they can't just walk on the sidewalk. And just really annoyed at those kids that go on. When you see an old man muttering, it means he's annoyed about something. And usually the classic is that kids have walked on his lawn. But you will hear the person muttering. So it's quiet complaining to yourself that other people probably can't quite hear. You mutter. And then a crowd, there might be a murmur. So a murmur is when there's a lot of people talking at the same time and you can't quite hear any one person. So like in a crowd, that's a really bad example, but you'll just hear this murmur. So you can't quite hear words, but you can hear people talking. That is how I would describe a murmur. And then we have plop and plunk. These are challenging ones for me because to me, they're the same thing, but we couldn't quite agree on plunk yesterday. If you throw a rock in the water, it'll go plop, like it'll make a sound. If you throw a big rock in the water, or if you dropped something like this, it would go plunk. Like it would just, similar to bang almost, like plunk, it would hit the floor. But plop to me is like, I'm not sure if you can make that sound. You could also do it like this. My sorry. That's something we used to do as kids. We thought was really funny, but it doesn't mean my head is hollow. But you can make kind of that sound by doing that. Should I do that again? It's the hollow-headed Bob the Canadian. And then a plunk to me is something a little more a little louder and a little more violent. Like you can plunk down in a chair, like you sit down really fast. You could throw like a piece of wood on the ground and it plunks onto the ground. Like it makes like a dunk sound. But to me, that's what a plunk is. So plop and plunk, a little lower, at least in my opinion. You can snip, so you can hear a snip, like snip, 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 snip. If you're using a pair of scissors to cut a piece of paper, it would go snip, 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 snip. You would just hear that little, that sound of sharp metal going across metal makes the snip sound. If you have flowers and you have pruners, snip, 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 you'll hear the snip sound as you cut those flowers. Wham, and this is not the duo from the late 80s who made some really good songs. This is the sound you hear when an accident happens or when something big hits something else. We often use it to describe this type of situation. So you might hear someone say, the car was driving and then wham, it hit the guardrail. Or I was sitting in traffic and all of a sudden, wham, someone hit me from behind. So it's not a particular sound. Like this is the one where I wouldn't say I heard a wham. That doesn't sound right to me, but it's an expression to talk about the noise you hear when something big hits something else. Like the car was crossing the train tracks and wham, the train hit it. So it's used to express that kind of situation. Bang. So what did we talk about earlier? Boom, boom, and bang. So when the fireworks go up, they go bang. So pew, pew. I can't make a really good deep bang sound, but when you go see fireworks, they go up in the air like bang. I'm looking forward to seeing fireworks as I described them. Bam. This is similar to wham. So you might say something like, I was driving along and I was on ice and then bam, I hit the car in front of me. Or my mom was walking and slipped on ice and whew, bam, she landed on the ground on her butt. That's probably not a good example. I think my mom would get hurt if that happened. I should talk about myself. I was walking on ice and then I slipped and bam, I landed on the ground on my butt. That hurts, by the way. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you. And then hiss. So if you poke a small hole in a tire, you will hear tss. You will hear the air coming out of the tire. You will hear that hiss sound. You could say, oh, the tire looks flat and it was hissing. I heard the sound of air coming out of the tire. Never a good thing when you hear psst. That means your tire's flat.